When I'm filming videos of people talking, I'm always trying to get some really soft light. So in this setup, I have lights bouncing off the ceiling, but that's not always a possibility. So what I end up doing typically is I'll shoot my light through like one of these cheap 5-in-1 reflector things, but that's not always the best way to do it because you can't position them very well. And so I've been using Westcott Flex lights for a little bit, and I got in contact with Westcott to do a Real Deal review to check out their book light kit that actually sits on the ground like an open book, and you can bounce light through it. You can use it to block light as a negative fill. You can shoot through it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start opening it up, give you a look at what you would use it for and the different setups you could try it with. So let's just start opening it. So it just came in, and it has a really nice rolling case, which if you're going to be traveling with this much stuff, it's going to be really nice. So this is the Scrim Gym Cine. They have a little quick start guide, which is cool because usually with lighting and grip equipment, you don't get much help, but it's talking about, you know, all the different types of things you can get from them. Then you have, you know, this is the unbleached muslin, which is something that I would use as a negative fill or to just block out as much light as possible. So this is the black material there. You have the silver side as well. And then the other side of this is white. So the silver would be really good at reflecting light, and the white would be good at bouncing it. Then right here we have the 3/4 of a stop diffuser. So this will go over the whole Scrim Gym on one half of the book light, and this will help diffuse the light and really soften it up. This is the hinge corner frame, so you can open and close the book light. Then here we have a half stop grid. So there's just a bunch of different combinations you can use with this thing once we build it out. And then we basically have all the different connector pieces and all of the pipes. So this thing can take a little bit of time to build out. So we're gonna actually build it here on the floor. I'll show a little time lapse of it as well while we're building it to show how much time it takes this first time for us to build it. And then once it's together, we'll start putting on the different kinds of fabrics and cloths and show you some examples of the kind of light you can get out of it. Okay, so we built it. We had to change out some of the little silver parts on the hinges to make it so that it would connect properly, but it's built now. And we're going to put a bunch of different kinds of material on it so that we can then demo it for the different uses. So we're gonna put the black muslin on the outside of this side so we can test the negative fill aspect of, you know, cutting down any light coming from one side of a subject. We're gonna put the silver on here so we can show how that might reflect, and then we're gonna put some diffusion on this material. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we just built it out for the first time. We have the silver here, the diffusion material here, and then the black cloth here. And so what you would do theoretically is you would place a light here, bounce it into the silver, and it would go through, and this would become a huge soft box that would make some really soft light. You could also just shoot directly through if you wanted. That would make the light source like more powerful. And then I have this side so that you can put this up against somebody and the light won't be bouncing into this side of their face as opposed to if you didn't have this here. So this would give you some negative fill. So we're gonna just set this up using the Westcott Flex lights that we have right now in the room, and we're going to show you what they look like. Okay, so for our first setup, we're going to actually bounce the light into the silver and then through the diffusion to offset this huge amount of window light we have. So over to the subjects right here, We have windows and we've had the curtains brought down, but it's cutting down some of the light, not all of it. And then to the left here, we have the book light. So let me go ahead and zoom in here, get the shot, and you can see that there is a ton of light on the right side of his face. It's very one-sided right now. So if we're gonna go ahead and bring in the flex light here to offset it, so that's at 20% there, and that really just fills in the shadows. It doesn't necessarily overpower. If we wanted really flat lighting, so we wanted to match outside, you know, that's at about 60% there. You have pretty flat lighting. And if I go all the way to 100%, now the window light is the shadow side and it becomes the fill light, and the key is the book light here. So you can see that you get a lot of different options, and you can play around with the movement as well. So depending on like where you put the book light, how close, how far away, that would be one setup. The next one we're gonna do is we're just gonna shoot straight through it. So if we're gonna shoot just straight through the diffusion material, the other side isn't really used, but I'm using it in this example to block as much window light as possible so that there's not any light hitting Tim at all, barely. So the black muslin and the silver on this other side here are really just blocking as much window light as possible so that when I hop behind the camera here, there's not that much light hitting Tim at all. And then let me reposition the camera here. And then as I grab the dimmer, we're now, you know, bringing this up, this key from the same side that you're already having a bunch of light coming in from the window. So it's a much more dramatic effect. That's at about 30%. And he has like a lot of shadow here on the right side of his face. But I mean, this is a pretty dramatic lighting setup normally, but you could bring in, you know, you could bring in another Westcott on this side to fill it up a little bit or bounce it off the ceiling or do whatever. So I actually really like how this looks. And so this would be a perfect way to, you know, block a bunch of light if you have light coming from a certain way, and then key from that same side to get a really dramatic look. The next thing we're gonna do is we're going to use just the black muslin side as a negative fill to show you how that works to bring in shadow to a side of someone's face. Okay, for this one, we're gonna have to bring in the black muslin. We're using just the ambience of the room and the window light to use as the key, but we want it a little more dramatic. So we're gonna bring in the black muslin here. Let me know when I'm about to hit you, Tim. Okay, so I can go a little closer. And this is basically taking out light from the left side of his face here. So it's supposed to make it a little bit more dramatic versus if I got rid of this entirely, got out of the way. Now if we look at it, it's fairly flat. We do have a fill light over on his right side, screen left, that's there. But as I bring this back in and try not to run into Tim, you can see how it's adding more definition. It's changing the lighting ratio there on the left side of his face. So that'd be another good way to use this. Also, moving this thing around is really easy. Each different side of the book light has places for you to grab onto as well. So you could have someone essentially be standing there with this as well. And if you have someone walking towards the camera's on a gimbal or a dollying back, you could have someone just Hollywood this thing and move along with it. That would be a really good use of this too. This is really only just one way to use this. I know that this is the way it's marketed, the way you would build it out to use all of the pieces and everything, but you can also use this in different ways. You can build a bigger scrim gym that has a bigger piece of material that you buy that's a different size. You know, this is 4 feet by 6 feet tall when it's closed, and then open it becomes 8 feet by 6 feet. So you can get different kinds of material, whether you want to completely black out the light coming through or you're wanting just a huge diffusion. You can get different sizes and you can build these into different shapes too. So just because you're getting a book light, don't think that this is the only format you could use it in. These 3/8 inch inserts, it's very hard to say, these threaded adapters here, you can actually mount these onto light stands as well. There's a little note that says don't do it for something that's bigger than 2 feet by 2 feet. So you're gonna just want multiple supports, or you're gonna be using C stands with clamps on them to mount something big, but you know, this is just setting it up on the ground. You could also mount it up higher. You could use this to completely black out above someone if you're shooting in an office environment where you have fluorescent lights you just want to get rid of. You know, pop the black muslin right above the talent on 2 C-stands overhead, and then light normally. There's just a lot of different uses for this. I'm excited to try it out in even more ways, but even just seeing the 3 ways we demoed here today gets me excited to try this out a little bit better. And the fact that it comes with a little bit of a travel case, I could just fit a couple of Westcott flex lights in that case also. That becomes my lighting rig that I'm towing around instead of the big Kino Flows that I have. And it's super lightweight. You're not gonna pay overages when you fly. And yeah, it takes a little time to set this up, and you're not necessarily going to be able to use this in every environment. But if you get creative with a little bit, maybe you're just making a little 2x2 and you're putting some diffusion on that and putting it on a light stand, and then that becomes what you're shooting your lights through. So really just thinking about how you can use this in a bunch of different ways makes me excited to try it out more. So I hope you enjoyed this little review of the Westcott Scrim Gym book light here, and I hope to see you in one of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching.